Hi, my name is Peter. I've published over 1,600 books and many of them in brands. And my biggest brand alone has generated millions of dollars over the years. This is the 5-part of the video series I'm doing together with Andrey. Andrey has 2 brands with 4 books each. Each does between $5,000 to $8,000 per month. Today, we'll talk about why brand building is the key to big money and long-term success on KDP, how you can start scaling your current brands to new levels, and how you can start creating a completely new brand from scratch today and let it produce thousands of dollars a month in 6 months from now. Welcome, Andrey.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you. How has brand building changed your approach to publishing?
In the end, completely, but it was more like a coincidence that I got into brand building. I created a book in a niche. I really liked the niche, and the book didn't do that well, actually. So I liked the niche and my book. I thought my book was good, but it wasn't good enough. It doesn't hit the right spot. But then I thought, okay, I will just create a second book, try it again, a little bit new concept, new positioning, just different. And then after I published the second book was a big success. And then my first book, from BSRs of 100,000 plus, fall down to like 30,000 BSR consistently, alone because of the second book I published. So the cross promotion effect was crazy, only from 2 books. And that's where it clicked. And I thought, okay, I need to make more books in a series and use this synergetics from more books inside a brand.
So one of the main benefits, as we can hear now with brand, is that one book can lead to the sales of another book. Mm-hmm. And if people recognize that, okay, this book I liked, this book looks similar, it's from the same brand, let's buy this one as well. I know for myself, for example, I've read 1 book by Coco-Wyo. Now I've got probably 4 or 5 books by him. So it's just, if you like one author or you like one brand, you tend to buy more books of the same author.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can approach branding on different scales. So one scale is you can create like if you read fiction books, you read the first book, the second, the third, the fourth. So you don't start with the 5th book. You read them in the right order. And that can be one attempt, but the other approach can also be to make just similar books, and you can start with the 4th book, then you read the 2nd, then the 3rd. So there isn't a clear order, and these are the 2 types of brands I see the most on KDP. And I think if you look at branding like that, you can plan better how you can create the brand, how to start, how to continue, and how to find more books.
And if we think about the biggest self-publisher now that we all see, if we go to the top 100, which one?
Yeah, it's Coco-Wyo.
Coco-Wyo.
Yeah.
So if we think about, okay, if they didn't have a brand, would they be able to produce, I don't know how many books they have in the top 100, but let's say 5.
I think they have 4 in the top 20.
Top 20, yeah. Would they be
when I saw a few weeks ago.
Yeah, would they be able to create 4 books in the top 20 if they didn't have a brand?
I don't think so.
No, definitely.
It's only branding.
Yes. So now we see the benefit of building a brand. I think it's quite obvious. It's also long-term. Yeah. If you got an email list, you can generate your own sales and traffic and boost your book in a completely different way. But let's go over some points to scale a brand. So what do you think is the first thing one should consider when building a brand?
You should first look if the niche has a potential for a brand. If you're in a niche where you can't do multiple books that add value to what the people are searching, then you don't have a base, you don't have a foundation to create a brand on it. So a niche, as we talked about in previous videos, is always a problem. And the people want the solution for their problem and the best solution. And some problems are so big that it needs many books to, in the end, solve the problem. Or even if the problem is solved, it will come again in another form. For example, if you sell useless facts book, this is the German term is useless facts in German, of course. I think it's trivia books. I think trivia books it's called in English. And trivia books solve the problem that people are bored, they want to be entertained with books like this. And as soon as they have finished the book and enjoyed it, the problem comes again that they want a new book. and then they buy a second trivia book. And that's why trivia book brands perform that well, because as soon as the book is finished, the problem is here again. And what is a good example? If you have like learning the piano, for example. If you have learned to play the piano with a book, then you have learned to play the piano. You don't lose the ability to play the piano that you learned the last few weeks or month with this book after finishing the book. So you don't buy another book on how to learn the piano. Maybe you buy a more advanced book on different musical pieces to play on the piano, more complex, and you will go up ladders of complexity. But you don't buy the same book as before, compared as to trivia niche where people buy 10 of the same type of books. And we need to just think about niches and how we can place the books inside these two types, as I said, these series and these ladders of brands. And that's the first thing before start thinking about the brand.
And to that point, let's say take the piano niche. Okay, you got piano for beginners, maybe intermittent piano, advanced piano. Maybe you can create some songbooks. But also what I'm thinking is, okay, you can take them through levels. So the book might just be the start of this brand.
Yes.
So for example, you might have a course, and that is more so you're not scaling in terms of width with the books, but rather you're taking the client or the customer, the reader, through this ladder where they maybe pay $15 for a book, but then they may be paying $97 or even more for a course, and maybe one-on-one or group piano lessons, something like that. So you can also think that way. I've seen some publishers, it's a more advanced strategy, but I've seen some publishers make this work as well.
And you can frame it like a bonus for the people. So I think in the niche video we talked about in the series, we talked about adding value, or it was the quality video. One of the previous videos in the series we talked about, for example, you can create a book in these learning niches and say, if you buy this book, you get a free 1-hour session with a piano teacher online. And this is a bonus, but at the same time, the piano teacher, after this 1-hour lesson, then can sell the person to a continuous subscription, so that he learns piano once a week with the piano teacher, for example, and pays, I don't know, $40 an hour or something. So that could be the bonus, could be the start of an upsell into a further business model or in another part of your business. And you can cooperate or partner with a piano teacher to offer this bonus. At the same time, he has a benefit from it through getting new customers. So you can just find a new synergetic effect, positive effect.
Yes, and perhaps you can also partner with the piano teacher where if he makes a certain amount of money through his services, you take a cut from that, and all of a sudden you built an income stream outside of KDP. So that's another idea. Okay, so we covered point one. The foundation is to think about, okay, do I want to create a brand in terms of the width of the books, a lot of books, or do I want to go more in depth in terms of solving more with other sorts of mediums, such as a course or one-on-one or group coaching, etc., etc., or perhaps also other products. For example, I could see, if someone buying a piano book, maybe they want to buy a piano. They want to know, okay, which one is the best piano? You can get an affiliate commission for that. So the next thing I think is important when it comes to brand is how to actually make the brand and how to get people to recognize that it is a brand. Mm-hmm. So what can we think about there, Andrey?
I think first the brand should have a clear style. So if you see 5 books of the brand, you should recognize these 5 books, that they are connected. This can be very extreme, where all covers look very identical, but it can also be slightly that just a little mark is there that you can see, okay, on the edge of a cover there is a little badge or something like that, and this is the brand logo, for example. That could also be enough. For example, travel guides often have that. Travel guides have often the same design, but also I've seen travel guides that have different designs and just a line on the top of the cover where it states the name of the travel guide brand. So this is a way to do that. Travel guide also is an example where brands are that effective because if you want a travel guide for Italy, for example, you buy that, but you aren't interested at all in, I don't know, Sweden or America. And so even you have a brand, you can't do this cross promotion that heavily like in compared to the trivia book niche, where it's more obvious to buy if you like one trivia book, a second trivia book. So travel guides have a way more long-term effect on branding, because if somebody this year travels to Italy, maybe in 3 years he will go to Sweden and then buy a Swedish travel guide if you have made a good impression. But it's not instantly in the next month. Normally it's a way bigger, longer period of time. So the first thing is the optic, that you can see that the brands are connected. And for me, the second most important thing is, of course, doing a series, so that if they click on it, they can buy all books in the series together, and linking the books on the A+ content. I think the A+ content, it was the most powerful thing for me when it's about brand building. I think you can only link there 6 books at the same time, but you can look, if you have more than 6 books, you can just look which books have the best synergetic effects, who work the best together, and then place them on the A+ content. And then if the people scroll down, instead of looking for the competitors under the sponsored, because on your product page many other books are, and people can click off your product page to other books that are the running ads on your product page. But if you have on the A+ content your other books, then normally the people first click through all of your books, and this costs you nothing, instead of clicking away from your product and your brand. So that's, I think, the most important thing when it's comes to brand building. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think you mentioned many interesting points there, and let's unwrap one thing that we're going back to the first point, but I think it's so important is, let's say I am looking for a tutorial on a specific software or a specific device. I will only buy one book because I've solved my problem.
Yeah.
And the likelihood that I'm interested in another software is very low.
Yeah.
So that is just similar to the travel guide example, where I've solved my problem now with this country. I don't need a travel guide for another country, for example. But let's take an example where it's more like you're creating a series. Like if you think about a TV series, people can watch it for hundreds of hours potentially. Yeah. And that's a very powerful thing. And that's something you get with fiction. That's more easily with fiction. But even with nonfiction, let's say we have one customer avatar. We think about one specific person. And I'm not saying this is a good niche to go into. It's quite competitive. But let's take self-help. Let's take someone who is looking to improve their social skills, for example. You have many different problems that this type of person might run into. For example, maybe they want to get better at public speaking. Maybe they want to increase their charisma. Maybe they want to learn how to do small talk better. And you have all these different keywords, introvert, extrovert, etc., etc. And you just go through and you can expand by solving several of their problems. And you're also giving them a reason to buy your book, because they're going to be curious, because they think they've solved this one thing. Let's say they learned how to do public speaking, but now maybe it's networking or maybe it's selling. So you have many different problems for the same customer avatar. So you can think about a professional, maybe with a certain profession even, and that is a way where you are solving many different problems for one customer avatar. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's great. You can also inside your book, you can link to other books and mention these other problems. You can say at the end that now this problem is solved. The next thing people like you, avatar, are normally doing is something like this, and then you have 3 other books that addresses 3 other problems of the same avatar. That's, I think, is a good thing. What I often do is in the introduction, in the first 20 pages, mention some books that make sense. So I think I have very unique books in that regard, because it's not like it's an organic way of mentioning them. It's not like just advertising. I mention them because it makes sense in my context of books I'm publishing. but I think way more people will buy it if it's in the beginning than if it's just at the end. Of course, they also have the books at the end linked, but in the beginning, I think it has a much higher conversion rate.
Yes. And even in the A+ content, perhaps you mentioned this, but we can add a series of books so they can see.
Yeah.
And we can, of course, if we add a series, they will see the books under the books or under the covers, and they can click, okay, let's buy all of these books. And and it's also that it's going to look good in the bookshelf. If you have a series that look similar, so for example, you can think about Alex Hormozzi's book. You can see the series, it's the same style with $100 million as the title, and then the covers are also in a similar style. So it's very easy for the customer to recognize that it's from the same brand. And of course, Coco-Wyo, you also see the same font style, and you see the same type of images or type of illustration. So it's very easy to recognize. So those are some ways you can create a cohesive and consistent brand where people are able to recognize it. So with the title, with the cover, with the A+, using the same colors as the cover, etc. Now, another super basic thing is to set up an author page for your book. And the benefit of having an author page is also that you can run video ads on Amazon ads. But I think one interesting thing you mentioned was that you had one book fed into the sales of other books. And I'm thinking in terms of Amazon ads, how that is also powerful, because now we don't necessarily need to make a profit in the lead-in book or one of the books, because we might make a profit in the rest of the books.
Yeah, if you read books from Alex Hormozzi, $100 million offer, for example, he talks about increasing the customer lifetime value. And it's very hard to increase the customer lifetime value on KDP because we have just books. But with things like building a brand and going outside of Amazon with courses, as Peter mentioned, or different books inside the brand, you can increase the customer lifetime value. And normal KDP publishers can, if they have royalties of $5, for example, they can at highest spend $5 in ads to get a sale, because if they spend consistently $6 per sale, then they will make a loss long term. So but if you have, for example, 4 books, and you know the normal customer buys at least 2 books, you doubled the amount you can spend to get the first sale, because you know, okay, in the next few months, and normally this customer avatar buys a second book inside the brand. Of course, in reality, many people buy only 1 book, but other people buy all of your books. So the average customer buys 2 books of your brand. Some buy 1, other buy 5, for example. The average customer, for all your customers, buys, let's say, 2 books. And then you know, if you make $5 in royalties per sale, that you can spend up to $10 for ads and run way more high aggressive ads. And that's also a great strategy. I, for example, run Facebook ads to get direct sales. And I have, in my brand, I have 1 book that sells the best. And I run all Facebook ads to this book. And this book is plus minus 0. So I sell for $2,000 and I spend $2,000 in Facebook ads a month for this book. So it makes 0 net profit. But the other books in my series have 0 ad spend, or not much ad spend, at least, because I of course run Amazon ads, but not that high, but make $800-900 a month each. Because all the people are coming from the main book, from Facebook ads, and also buying the other books. And you can track with Amazon attribution, at least in Germany. The attribution in the US is not that good. I don't know why, but if you do Amazon attribution in Germany, you can look what customer bought the other books. So if I run Facebook ads, I can track it and I see, okay, the Facebook user that clicked on my Facebook ad is now on Amazon, and he bought these 3 books from me. And I can see and track that. And that's the perfect way of scaling a brand through external traffic, if you know exactly what they are buying, how much you can spend.
Yes, I think that is the main benefit, is you can spend more on external traffic, but also I see some people, they do a perma-free ebook, for example.
Yeah.
just with the purpose of not making money from that ebook, but rather to drive in by, for example, what you mentioned, either early on, mention the next book, or at the end. So once they read this perma-free book, maybe it's a little bit shorter, just to get them hooked, and then they start buying the rest of the books in the series. So when you're building a brand, I would encourage you to think about the compound effect, because maybe in the beginning it's slow, but we have talked about the fact that one book can lead to the sales of another book, and eventually imagine if you have several books, then in the beginning it might look slow, but then it starts to compound and it goes up like this. And that is because you've built the right infrastructure, where now instead of them buying another book by another author, they are now buying several of your books, and you're making more per reader, more per customer. And I think that is where the power lies, and everything starts to become its own ecosystem, especially if you're building social media and you have an email list. They start seeing you everywhere, and you get this omnipresence where, okay, I see this new book by this new author, let's buy that one, I like the first one. So of course, the base for this is the quality content, which we went over in, I believe, 2 or 3 videos ago. So that's the foundation. But once people like your content, instead of them having to guess, okay, this is another resource by another author, I'm not sure if I'm gonna like this one. I would much rather just buy from this brand that I've already bought from before. So once you got them, because in marketing we usually talk about it's hard to get a customer to spend the first dollar with you, but if you give them a great experience, then the next dollar or the next $100 plus, etc., is much easier.
Yeah. Also, if people see many of your books in the same niche, if they type in a keyword and they scroll down the whole page and they see from 10 books, 3 look the same, they think about that. They wonder, okay, I saw 3 books that were not the same, but they looked similar. There must be something about these books if I saw 3 of them from 10 books on the first search page. And then they click on one of these 3, and then they are in your brand. Because that's exactly what in my German main brand happens. If you search my main keyword, my 3 books pop out at place 1, 3, and 4, I think. So and the books look similar. So they see exactly, not exactly the same book, but very similar books, and then normally they click on it because it's just weird that there are 3 books that are that identical. So the books have to do something right if they pop up that high, that the people think, and then they click on it. So that's also a great defensive mechanism, because it's way harder for new publishers to get into niches like that if you have this power over the niche.
Yes. And I think one more point could be to think about the brand as you want it to stand for something. Because if you stand for everything and you're for everyone, they might not necessarily connect you to anything. So think about a normal person, think about how much they have going on in their day. To get them to remember you or remember your brand, it's quite hard. And especially it's hard if you have several things about your brand. So aim to find one core idea, one unique thing with your brand that makes it stand out. Because if you stand for everything, then you become a commodity or you become noise. So it's much better to just focus in, okay, this is my approach, this is my method, or this is who I'm for, or this is the way I create the books. It's a similar style. Let's say it's an illustrative guide or something like that. So that is also what I would encourage in terms of creating a brand. What do you say about that, Andrey?
Yeah, absolutely. That's very important. And in the end, maybe we should talk about that now before we end the video. If you have a current brand, you can use all the things we talked before in this video to build it further, to make new books. Because maybe you don't thought about brand building like we talked about in this video, and now you see, okay, I could add here and here and here new books to complete the brand, or to begin build up the brand on a newer level. So you can use all we said, not only for new brands, but also for your current brand, and just scale it or revive it if it's not doing that well anymore. So I think you should maybe watch the video a second time, make notes, and go over your brand and see what exactly you can optimize to scale it long term.
Yes, and think about complementary books. For example, if you've made a guide about something, you can perhaps make a workbook or a journal or something that complements the main book. So that is also a way to build a series of books. Now, I still have a few more points that I want to cover before we end the video, because we have one challenge when we're creating a brand. It's usually that it's a longer term play.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the role of a passion or having an interest in the topic? I know for your main brand, you are a bit interested in the topic, and that has definitely helped you in terms of getting into the shoes of the target audience.
Yeah, getting into the shoes of the target audience is important if you write copy, I think. If you write sales copy, you need to think like your audience thinks. And even if you're not interested, you need to gain the interest in the brand to really write great sales copy. So if you have the interest before that, then that's perfect, and it makes much more easier. Even if you aren't interested in the topic, then you just need to create this interest if you write the sales copy yourself. And normally you are the people who write the sales copy, because the sales copy is one of the most important parts. Even the positioning and creating the content of the book, you need to know the customer, you need to know the audience. It's not only for brand building, it's for every book you create. And if you create a brand and want to create a brand, then of course, if you have interest in the topic, I think it's a big advantage over people who just want to publish books and books and books and don't care at all what they're delivering. Also, the quality, at least I would guess, the quality is much higher if you care about the book and the topic of the book, because then you really look at it and say, okay, that would I personally read. You don't, if you, for example, write books for kids, it doesn't need to appeal to you, but you can understand the topic and see, okay, if I gave that to my own kids and I know the topic, then I would like to give this book to my kids to introduce them to the topic. So you can always try to empathize with the reader, with the customer. And I think that's a great benefit. And if you have a self-interest in the topic, it's much more easier to empathize with the people.
Yes. So now let's wrap up the video with some practical tips for those who want to build a brand from scratch. Let's say they don't have a brand that they can now implement these strategies. I think the main thing we covered in the beginning was to think, okay, how does the market look if I create a brand like this? We talk about either expanding through courses, etc., or with the amount of books that you have. So finding that, I think that is the core thing, and combining that with an interest. So think about the topics that you are interested in and see on Amazon, when you're doing niche research, can you find several books that are selling well? And perhaps you have to sacrifice something, because maybe the passion is here, but the market demand is here. But if you stick with it long enough, and especially if you build an email list, then it might come up here. And that is one benefit if you're taking this as a long-term approach and you're investing some passion into it. Because the brand that I built, it wasn't the most profitable, but I was able to make it profitable by creating a big email list and by including passion, because I was passionate about the solution and the topic. So if you do that, then you will have this compounding effect that starts to kick into effect.
Yeah, at some point you can create new, not necessarily new complete niches, but new sub-niches for some topics. If you have a big enough email list, a big enough following, I know you also do much social media stuff to build your brands. And if you have a big following or email list or both, you can just create a new niche inside, or a new sub niche inside a niche, and that's very powerful to do, because then you're not that dependent on demand on Amazon, because you can just create the demand. That's also why we normally don't want to compete with people that have great external traffic. If you do niche research, you look if the author is fame. If your main competitor author is fame, you normally don't want to compete with them, because they are just too powerful because they have their own traffic. They don't rely on Amazon's traffic. They have their own infrastructure that drives sales. And if external traffic comes to a book, Amazon loves that and will rank the book at the top. So not only have they completely Amazon independent external traffic, but also all the traffic from Amazon, because Amazon likes when people give when people give Amazon external traffic. So it's hard to compete with it. And if you build a brand with email list, with social media following, YouTube channel, or some people I know start with TikTok. I'm not familiar with TikTok, but for some books it seems to work pretty well. And if you have that, then that's also a great defensive mechanism to save yourself from new competitors enter the market, because you're just dominating through external traffic. Also, Facebook ads attack the same spot. It has the same benefit, but Facebook ads you need to pay, and social media following you don't need to pay. That's the difference.
Yes. So the bigger your audience becomes, the less you have to care about the keywords.
Yeah.
You still ideally want to include some keywords, but if you think about the top books on Amazon, they don't have many keywords. For example, the books by Jocko Willink, yeah, sure, discipline might be one. So ideally get a keyword there if we think Dave Ramsey has money. But imagine these are very broad keywords but they, of course, since
money,
since they're driving so much traffic to it, they are going to rank very high for those keywords.
Yeah.
So that's, of course, a very powerful position. And like Andrey said, it's a defensive mechanism, which we discussed in the niche video. So this will do it for the brand video. Thank you very much for watching. In the next video, we will talk about Amazon ads, and Andrey will share some of his strategies. So stay tuned to that. Thank you very much, Andrey, once again.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, and thank you for watching.